Welcome to For the Love of Books, Bees Books Edition, a podcast by North Lanarkshire Libraries.
Hello, this is Pari.
And this is Jenny, and we're here to talk about Bees books.
And this episode, we have a guest, our first guest.
Yay!
Welcome, Andrew.
Hello.
He's slightly reluctant to
Yes.
be here, but
No,
we're going
I'm
to drag
happy
him
to be
out.
here.
But we are very excited.
Yes, exactly.
And the theme that Bee gave us this time around was pop.
Pop.
You
You
should
did
say
it.
pop too, Andrew.
Oh, I'm supposed to say pop. Pop. Do you want me to say it in a pop voice?
Yeah.
Pop.
Oh no, that's much better.
I think he made
Yes,
up
I
for
thought.
his lack of... because Andrew is new around here, we still don't have the rhythm quite right.
Yes.
But maybe when you come back, you know, the
But
pop will
if-
be... When?
If.
So, the books that we've chosen this time, do you want to start, Andrew, since you're new here?
Okay. So my book is called Reach for the Stars by Michael Cragg.
Okay.
I'm quite liking the cover already. It's
Yes.
very bright.
It
It's
is.
very popish.
That's
You know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I like that.
I'll chat about that if you want.
Excellent. Okay. The book I've chosen is Larklight by Philip Reeve. And
Okay.
Pari, I'm very interested to know what book you've chosen.
The book I've chosen is The Eyebrows of Doom
Oh!
by Steve Smallman and Miguel Ordonez.
Okay, so for everybody that can't see this, it's a junior book, a picture book we would call it in libraries.
Yeah.
And it's called The Eyebrows of Doom and it has Eyebrows of Doom
It
on
does.
the cover.
It does, which is, I think it's the perfect book for this, and I'll tell you why. But first I want to hear about...
I also want to point out that Parry had said beforehand that we might have read a book already. But I've never even seen it before, and it's terrifying. So yeah, that's interesting.
This is good, this is good.
Excellent, yes.
So, Andrew, tell us a bit about your book.
Okay, so it's called Reach for the Stars, 1996 to 2006, Fame, Fallout, and Pop's Final Party. So it's basically a look at pop music in the UK in the late 90s, first half of the 2000s, and it's a non-fiction book. So it takes the format, it's like an oral history, so it's all told through quotes by people that were there at the time. And you're talking about the cover. I think the cover is the logos of magazines from the time.
that's
So I'm pretty sure
good.
that's top of the Pops magazine.
Yes.
And I think that's a later Smash Hits one. And I don't know what the top one is. But yeah, so I think that's kind of...
I think that's
The
probably why it stands out.
eye-catching-
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
say,
yeah.
that's what magazines did. They wanted
Uh-huh.
to draw you in,
Yeah.
and they've done that. That's
Yep.
really good.
I like that your book has pop in two ways right on the cover. Like
Yes.
usually Jenny and I get very convoluted, we make them fit in
No.
somehow, but yours
No,
is...
it's just, yeah, it covers
What
all
did
bases.
you think of the book?
Yeah, it's very good. So the way that it's structured is it takes each chapter is structured around a different thing, a different element of pop music. So it may be about a particular band, or it may be about a particular type of group, and it takes through Spice Girls, Girls Aloud, sort of Pop Idol, X Factor days, Blue, Busted, all these type of things. And it's quite good because there's things in it that you maybe didn't know, because obviously after all these years they can be honest about things, whereas they weren't allowed to be honest back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's some of it's quite eye-opening, and some of it is funny at the same time when they're talking about, for example, Five, the group Five, and how the industry people, the TV people and everything used to dread when Five came because they were so badly behaved.
Oh no!
And you couldn't control them. So it's things like that, and like the breakups behind the scenes. Obviously, at the time, you only know the official, this group have decided to go on a break. For example, you didn't know that, the other members of Steps didn't know until it was announced publicly that H and Claire were leaving and going to be their own group. Things like that. So it's quite good at that kind of thing. I think where it falls down is it's maybe not detailed enough in some ways, and there's bits that you go, but I want to know more about that. So there's a chapter on the Sugar Babes, and obviously Sugar Babes kept changing members all the time, and when it gets into the sort of later part of their career, they talk about how there was allegations of bullying and things like that behind the scenes, but you want to know. But they gloss over it and they just kind of go, oh, I didn't see any bullying, and somebody else says I was not a bully, but they don't mention what the things were, and then it just stops. So there's no then, when they got another member after that, and then how did they eventually just give up? It doesn't go far enough with some things for me.
Right.
But on the whole, it's good fun.
Is it the kind of book you can pick up and read a bit and then put down and not?
I will admit I did sort of skip a bit, because if there's groups or there's a type of music that you're not particularly interested
That's
in,
what I was gonna ask.
because it's structured that way, like if you go, I really hated Blue and I don't want to know anything about them, you could skip their chapter.
Is right.
But it's guitar. There's a chapter on sort of garage music at the time, which is Craig David and Mystique and Jamelia and people like that, and it's not my type of music, so I was a bit like, I'm not very interested in this, so I sort of skimmed through that. But you could pick it up, read a bit, come back to it. To be honest, I don't even think you need to read it in the order that it's in, because it does jump about a fair amount. So because it is talking about particular groups at each time, it does sort of follow a structure, but there's things that they come to and then come back to later on, so you could just dip in and out if you really wanted to. There's also not enough, I don't think, about boy bands. Like, we have a whole chapter on the Sugar Babes and a whole chapter on S Club 7, but then every boy band is all crammed into one chapter, so it's quite perfunctory. Is that the word? It sort of skims over, but it's an easy read, and if you want to,
So would you sort of recommend it for people who are fans of specific groups, or just pop culture, or just history, cultural history?
I think pop culture in general. I think probably if you were a massive fan of the groups, they wouldn't tell you anything you didn't already know.
Right.
But it is quite interesting hearing it in their own words.
Yeah.
So that's different, because it's not being told as a kind of narrative story. It's, a quote from Claire from Steps and a quote from Duncan and a quote, well, Duncan's not in it, but you get the idea. And it jumps between them all as well, and you feel like it's a conversation. So it's good fun. So anybody that has a passing interest in pop music of that time,
it looks like the kind of book you would maybe have like sitting on your shelf, and every now and
you would
again
dip in and out.
you would go, oh, can I get 10 minutes? You would take it down and go, and put it back again.
You say, I want a monthly dose of how Louis Walsh wasn't a very good manager. That kind of thing.
And does it go into like the background as well, into like the management and things of
Yes. So like with Girls Aloud, Louis Walsh was the manager, but he really wasn't interested. So they talk about how that he wasn't a very hands-on manager, and he basically says, well, no, I wasn't a very hands-on manager. I wasn't interested in their doing their hair and their makeup, that kind of thing.
So he's fully standing up and like, I didn't care about it.
No. So you do get the vibe from some of them that you come across and you go, no, that's not a very nice person.
No.
A few people within it, you go, not very nice.
But they don't seem to be self-aware enough to like maybe filter themselves a little.
There's a slight bit. So one of the chapter on 5, when they're talking about that, the really horrible thing that happened with 5 was that towards the end of their initial sort of pop career, Sean basically had a breakdown and left the band, but they didn't come out in public and say that had happened to him. They just went, oh, he was ill. But they were due to film a video for their next single, so they replaced Sean with a cardboard cutout of himself.
No.
Which is horrific when you look back on it now.
Yeah.
At the time, did you notice?
You just went, that's a bit strange, but because you didn't know why he wasn't there, you didn't understand.
It could have been an inside joke or something.
But in retrospect, and John says in the book how he was distraught and he thought it was terrible and all the rest of it, and the other guys are like, now they can see how that was a terrible thing. Yeah. So they do kind of admit in a lot of their mistakes, and there's elements as well when they're talking about the sort of reality pop stars of, the early 2000s, particularly with Hershey, where they became famous so quick, and they lasted one single. Basically, their first single sold like 1 million copies, and then nobody was interested after that. And even how they were treated, and the way they were treated by the press, and the way they were treated by the public, and even in the auditions for the show, the fact that Nasty Nigel told Kim Marsh she was too fat on TV. You just couldn't do that now.
No.
I mean,
No.
there was no safeguarding or anything.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was enough put in place to look after these people. So it's quite interesting from that point of view to read a wee bit more. And also they get no time off. I mean, we think being a pop star is a really glamorous job. Jo from S Club 7 says at one point that her job was like, there was like 10% of it or something was singing, and the rest of it was all promoting
Yeah.
on a plane, sleeping under a table. That's, you know,
Yeah.
these are young people and they were being exploited.
No,
and
absolutely.
you do get a sense of that. So, yeah, I feel like I learned something from it.
I think as well in that time in pop, it's not like it is now with social media is everywhere.
Yeah.
No.
You know, that there was less of that. So if somebody did have a breakdown or something did
Yeah.
happen, it wasn't as obvious as it is now. You know, it wasn't out there.
I think that the media, particularly the Sun and the News of the World, were very good at sort of sticking the boot in when people were struggling. So there's a lot of bits of that where you feel like the people really weren't given the support that they should have got. One of Atomic Kitten had bad postnatal depression, which from the Sugar Babes, they were given no support. It was like, you can have 3 days off and then you need to be touring for 6 months. So I think it's hopefully in a better place now, but
Yeah, who knows?
We'll have to
Who
read another
knows?
book to find out.
who knows? But yes, all in all, if you've got a kind of passing interest in that sort of thing, it's probably not in depth enough for the big fans. But yeah, good fun and yeah, an easy read.
It's nice it's a non-fiction as well. We've not really done a
Yeah.
non-fiction yet.
Even though I'm a huge non-fiction fan, I like reading more about cultural history and pop
Yeah,
culture. So from that perspective, and was it just British bands? Did you say?
It's just British bands,
Yeah.
so it's looking at UK bands.
So it would be
it does
interesting.
touch on American and
Yeah.
things like that, and it mentions bits and pieces of other people, and it talks about how it's more about how they came into being in relation to other people. So
Yeah.
like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were kind of coming to the end of their natural life, and in the UK it was becoming more sort of Busted McFly, guitar-based pop, which was a different thing. So it looks at it from that perspective as
Yeah,
well.
so different kinds of
yeah.
readers, I think, would get different kinds of things. Well, Jenny, what about you? Why did you choose Larklight?
So the theme was pop, and I really struggled to find something for this. So I've
But that's
chosen
obviously
this.
why the tree gave you.
Exactly. she does like to tempt us. So it's a roundabout way, but Larklight is kind of a steampunky kind of book. It's for juniors. I would say it's more of a teen book. And I would say if you've never read a teenage book as a grown-up, read them because you get a lot out of them. But the reason I kind of squashed it into the theme of pop is that the dad, who you might call Pop, gets kidnapped right at the beginning.
Oh, this is a very tenuous link there, Jenny.
Also, because it is steampunky, there's blunderbusses in it, and when I think of blunderbusses, I think of pop noises when somebody shoots somebody with a blunderbuss.
What is a blunderbuss?
It's like a big rifle.
Oh.
Now, I didn't know what a blunderbuss was until, this is me going down a complete tangent here, but as a child I loved to play Cluedo. And when I was about 8 or something, we bought, when we were away on holiday, Super Cluedo Challenge, which was like an extended version of Cluedo with extra people and extra weapons. And one of the weapons was a blunderbuss, and I had no idea what it was. But you got a wee card that showed you it was a big rifle, and I had never heard of a blunderbuss before.
Now, I'm sure it doesn't make a pop noise. I'm sure it's a very bang noise.
Oh, yeah.
But in my head, it makes a kind of pop
Love
noise.
it. I also love the name blunderbuss
Yes.
because I had no context for what I was imagining a creature, but then the way that you were saying it, I was like, this seems like a real thing. I don't know how this fits in with. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why I chose it. As I say, it's kind of steampunky, so it's kind of Victorian. And basically, if you take Victorian London and put it in space, that's what it's about. So basically, people like Isaac Newton and things like that had the ideas that they had, but it branched off in a different way. So basically, Victorian London is Victorian London. The Great Exhibition is about to start, which really happened, but there's a lot more kind of machines and things like that than there were. So basically at the beginning of the book, they live on this ship that's called Larklight, and it's a boy and a girl, Art and his sister, and the dad gets stolen by these giant spiders. If you don't like spiders, this is maybe not the book for you, because it's also illustrated.
Oh no!
Because I was about to say, at least you would see them.
No.
Oh, no.
And I'm pretty sure, I'm just going to flick through that right at the beginning, you do see the spiders. So the illustrations are beautiful. They're very similar to the ones from the book that you had mentioned a wee while ago.
Chris Riddle?
Yes,
Yeah.
So it's fabulous drawings. I'll just show you.
Oh, is
very
it him?
quickly.
Is he the one who's done it?
No, so it's illustrated by David Wyatt, but they're very similar.
I love the... I don't think I read enough books that have illustrations in them, because not many do. But it's nice that a young adult book has them. Oh.
So the
I see
spiders
what you
that
mean.
come,
Yeah.
there's a big spider, he wears a top hat and he speaks English. So they steal away the father, and the whole plot is basically they want control of Larklight, but Art and his sister go on lots of wee adventures. They end up on Mars and things like that. There's aliens, but it's very much part of society, because that's the way it's kind of went, that it's okay to, Martians and all these kind of people. The giant spiders are not a huge surprise to them, because there's all sorts of different animals. On Larklight itself, they have hoover pigs who basically fly around and hoover up all the crumbs and things like that.
Oh, I'd love a hoover pig. I hate hoovering.
I'm not going to spoil it for people, but the way they fly around is not how you imagine. Let's just say it's a slightly smelly way of flying around.
No.
But it's very good. It's very well done, and as I say, it's not a book that you go, oh, that's a kid's book and that's it. There's a lot in it. It's very much as well like another book that we were talking about before, where it's that kind of, women are kind of set apart slightly, and his sister, is the smelling salts out every now and again, and she's quite disappointed at one point that she doesn't faint, because she knows that ladies are supposed to faint, but actually, so although it's a kid's book and, the main characters are kids, it's very funny, it's very good, but I did kind of squeeze that into the pop.
So are they on in this world?
So
right from the beginning, they don't
yes.
end up there. It's
So
all takes place there.
yes,
So it's like an alternate history.
So that's how they live, that's how they go, and basically they get jettisoned off in a space pod when the ship gets taken over, and they end up getting captured by pirates, who are actually quite nice pirates, and they have adventures, and then eventually they come back to discover what's what.
He's also the one who's written Mortal Engines, right?
Yes,
That series. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, Andrew, or you, Jenny.
I've not read the other one.
So that's like an alternative future, basically, where cities have become, they move around, and it's that series. It's like a quartet. It's pretty interesting as well, just because of, I love how when brains work weirdly, and like this is not something I would have ever come up with, but just that felt, I suppose not steampunk, but lots of machines and a different world, and lots of terrible characters, like terrible in a good way characters. Yeah. So I like his writing.
No, it's very good.
What would you say to somebody who said, that as an adult you shouldn't be reading a children's book? And I don't mean that from a that sounded worse in my head. That's not how I went to the sound. But somebody who says, well, why should I read a child's book? That's too juvenile for me. How would you encourage people?
I seen a quote somewhere, and I can't remember who it was, and this will not be the quote itself, but basically it said everybody should read a junior book every now and again, because adult books are filled with really depressing stuff. People die, people, but kids' books are full of dragons and space and exciting things. If you've never read a junior book before in an adult life, go back and read a teenage book first. Go back and read something like this, or even the Philip Pullman books or something like that you've maybe seen on TV, and you think, because they're not just for kids. It's like watching a Disney movie. There's lots in there that's really for an adult as well.
I also like that, because I read a lot of children's books as well, and it's looking at the world from a different perspective. and even though children's books are written like by adults, so it's like an adult way of looking, but I think like children's book writers are sort of more in tune with. So when you're only reading adult books, it can be quite a depressing way of looking at the world. But yeah, it's just fun, and there's more agency. I think like children are sort of trying to fight against the systems that they live in whatever way.
I mean, this is a fun book. It's a fun book. And just if you want something out of the normal, if you want something that's not going to make you cry or anything like that, you know, it's just a bit of fun.
Is it a standalone? Is it part of a series?
I
don't know.
Can't remember.
Well,
I hope
it's up to the listeners to find out.
I hope there's more. There's scope for more.
Yeah.
Because at the end you learn something and you think,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
If he hasn't, I'm sure he will write more. Knowing my luck, there'll be like 12 books already, and I've just not read them yet. It is something that could go on. In my head, I could see it as a TV series. You know, even the first book, you know, a 10 episode series, you know, where all these kind of adventures happen, and then it kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger to see what happens next. No, it's good, and I like the whole steampunky ness about it, but it's not in your face. So even if you don't know what steampunk is, which I'm sure some people will be sitting going, what are they talking about? You kind of get that, you know, when you're reading it. I also like the fact that a lot of this kind of book is set in the future, or alternate universes which are kind of slightly in the future, whereas this is set as the same kind of Victorian times. You know, Queen Victoria actually does make an appearance, and I quite like that as well, because I like historical books. So having the historical and the sci-fi kind of mixed in,
that's cool.
was good. So yeah, it's good. But I'm desperate, Pari, to know why you chose The Eyebrows of Doom.
Well, mine's pretty. So mine's even younger than yours. I read a lot of picture books, and I think a lot of adults should read picture books. But I chose this for two reasons. Pop is both tenuous and obvious, literally these eyebrows. So the story is about, well, I'll read how it starts. In some woods in a cave, a big bear called Dave was sweeping his floor with a broom when two clumps of hair leapt into the air and cried, "We are the eyebrows of doom!" And they leap into his brow, the bear's eyebrows, Dave the bear. So they pop on. And they make him behave horribly. He's very rude, he's like horrible, he attacks humans, and then he goes around and then they pop onto a seagull. So the eyebrows just keep popping onto different animals and things' faces, and just make them behave really horribly. And the other reason I wanted to recommend it with this company is because all three of us do BookBug at some level or the other, and I think this would be such a fun book for BookBug, so not just for adults to read it and chuckle to themselves, but for adults to read with their young people, or for BookBug people to read in a group. So when I do BookBug, I don't know about the two of you, I love putting subversive books in there a little bit. Like, I don't always, like some of the wholesome books, it's nice, oh, everybody lived happily ever after. Great, whatever. But I do that, and then I'll put in somewhere where nobody, or maybe just the villain lived happily ever after, or the eyebrows of doom were having a grand old time and they didn't really learn their lesson at the end, which is, I think, how it goes. But I like sort of putting that into, because I don't think children have like these neat, you know, unmessy lives. And if they only read about neat sort of endings, I think that does them a little bit
Gives
of
them unrealistic expectations.
Absolutely. And the parents. Maybe the parents want to live vicariously through these characters who are always well behaved. So, but I like the one. So another one that I really like is John Klassen. His whole series of the hat books, so like I Want My Hat Back and This Is Not My Hat. So I put that in, and there's a group of grown-ups that I love because they like are all, like, I say this is scandalous and they gasp in horror and then in the end there's no resolution and they just laugh, which is like my kind of
But that just shows you that adults do get books, you know, that are not for adults as such. I'm sure there's loads of parents out there that love reading at night to their kids, slightly more than the kids maybe like to listen to the book eventually, because you do get a lot out of them, you know, and the illustrations are just fantastic.
Right.
I do like your other book, Bad Bunnies.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm a bit distressed though, for obviously people can't see it, but the eyebrows have eyes, so it makes it look like the people have like 4 eyes, and it just terrifies me.
I hadn't noticed
Yes,
that
look.
until you pointed it
Look,
out.
that child there.
And now I'm a bit disturbed by these eyebrows.
Yeah.
And it's just the one eye, so each eyebrow has just... Okay, thanks for making this a horrifying
That's all right. It just to terrify you even more. Yeah.
I was delighted. Now I'm terrified.
And what happens to Dave the Bear does bad things?
Yeah,
and
it's
then
just
they
a
hop
series.
off.
They keep like hopping off onto a series. At one point, there's like a really angry looking baby because there's
Yes, I think
eyebrows.
that was what,
That's the one that disturbed you the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
there,
yeah.
Andrew.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So they just make and like a park ranger, and they just become really grumpy and just give everyone a bad time. And in the end, the whole community has to come and rescue the world from the eyebrows, and they succeed for what they think the last time, and then it's not that. There's a crack in your octopus. Yeah. There is room for a sequel.
Yay.
For this. It could be an eyebrow.
They're going to have 6 eyes on the face.
I think like spiders are not. I'm not that scared of spiders unless they're really large. I feel like 4-eyed. I think that might be a new fear that's been unlocked.
That crawled across my carpet.
Yes, I think. Yes.
I think I'd have to have a talk with myself about my son.
And is there a backstory? Do we know where they came from?
No, just what you read. He was just sweeping the floor, and 2 clumps of hair just rose up in the air. Yeah. Oh, they have feet as well, as Jenny has pointed out. And eyebrows have eyebrows.
No, this is like no.
It's gotten very meta.
Oh no.
I think B is giving us a frown now. I
Wow.
think B's not impressed with
Eyebrows on eyebrows.
And
on
feet
eyebrows.
And it how much deeper does it go? Do these eyebrows have eyebrows?
Oh.
Eyebrowception? Is that what's going on?
Well,
Andrew also does not look at it. I was sharing a delightfully subversive book for fellow bookwork people who've made it a horror story.
no, but it, to be fair, it sounds like the kind of book that I would like to read if I was doing BookBug, because I always like to try and find something that I can put a lot of expression into and do voices or
Okay, do the voice.
make
Do
it sound.
the eyebrows of doom.
I
at your
don't know.
best.
Do they speak?
No, do.
Well,
just-
yes.
We are the eyebrows of doom. That's how it would sound to me.
That's terrifying.
There you go.
But
That's
you
how
know
it
what?
would sound.
Kids would love that.
Absolutely.
Kids
And
would
the
love that.
dark
Yeah,
Word.
so and I always feel when you're reading the story, a lot of people don't like reading a book, doing a book bug, because they feel the kids aren't listening. But that's partly their problem, because if you do a story well enough that you capture the adults' attention, then it's as much for them as it is for the kids. If the kids don't want to listen to it,
100%.
it's fine. But
Yeah.
you're giving the adults something to listen to as well.
And you're giving adults the tools and skills and confidence,
Yeah.
hopefully, to be able to do it themselves. Like you're showing how it can be done, and it's something not just for the grown-ups in the room, but like for like us.
Absolutely.
You know, if we come in and someone does it slightly differently, you're like, oh, you never
You
thought
learn
of doing
something.
it like that.
Yeah.
Like your voice, fantastic.
Ah.
Yeah.
I was
Some-
expecting you to go down there. We are the eyebrows of doom.
Oh, I love that
See?
too, Jenny.
Different
It's really
voices,
nice.
uh-huh.
The only thing I would say when you're doing different voices is if you're doing a story, for example, that has lots of different animals,
Yeah.
then you sometimes forget what voice you gave to, you know,
Yeah.
like you go, oh, the dog's Australian, oh no, wait a minute, the rabbit is Australian. So that's...
I do that with the songs, because some of the picture books, I just put a tune to it, and I am super tone deaf. Like I'm musically completely challenged. But I like singing anyway. I don't care that I'm bad, and hopefully other people will drown me out. But when I'm reading, I forget the tune that I applied, so it changes midway, and like nobody cares, I say to myself.
But again, this is great for adults, because I think, as you say, adults are slightly scared of doing that. You know, they're scared of putting on a voice or singing a song badly. the kid doesn't care. The kid
No.
just wants to hear your voice. The kid
Yeah.
wants to join in.
Yeah.
So
And being silly together adds so much, so, like being comfortable with being silly.
absolutely.
Like, I don't really care about, like, I speak to an audience of children and hopefully the adults go. And some of them actually do. Like, I'll ask for audience participation in my book bug sometimes. And some adults will just be like, no, we're not here to participate. But some will super
Absolutely.
go into it and, like, I love it.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I think we've actually run out of time
Oh, wow.
for our pop episode. So, do you know, Jenny, what Bees challenged us for next time?
Well, I think she's taken on Andrew's idea of a non-fiction. So she's just called it fact or fiction. But that kind of leaves us wide open for
It
us to choose
does.
something. So fact or fiction.
Excellent. Andrew, thank you for being a fantastic guest. I can't speak words.
Thanks for having me. It's been a nice treat.
And hopefully our listeners have enjoyed it as well.
Yes, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.